to Houston. It's a homecoming as the Houston Texans officially announced today that former 49ers defensive coordinator DeMeco Ryans is now the new head coach for the Houston Texans. He signed a 6-year deal to come back to Houston, come back home. And after the second interview today, he was signed, and it's a third head coach in 3 off seasons for the Houston Texans. And it's technically their 8th head coach in franchise history. It's an A+ hire. It's a perfect hire. Let me tell you why. I'm going to be explaining why DeMeco is a perfect hire. I mean, he played 6 seasons for the Texans during 2006 to 2012, so he's already familiar with Houston and familiar with the staff here, familiar with the McNairs, and connection with the Houston fan base. He was a fan favorite here when he played one of the original Texans, and he played 4 seasons in Philly after he was traded, but he was a really, really great player for the Houston Texans during his time here. He's very, very well loved by the fan base as a whole. But you had the national media slamming the Houston Texans franchise after they fired Lovie Smith. After 1 year, it was another one and done after firing David Culley the year before, supposedly a racist organization, whatever that nonsense that they were spewing out there. But the reality is that there was no qualified candidate out there available for the job after Bill O'Brien was fired in 2020. So they signed David Culley, who's never had head coaching experience. So it was never really a qualified candidate in the first place. He's never going to get a head coaching job anyway. So they hired him. And then it was a hire to be fired eventually. And then in 2021, after that whole Brian Flores lawsuit thing, it seemed like under Jack Easterby, the Texans were kind of leaning towards getting Josh McCown, but that thing was nullified because of that Brian Flores thing. So then they went to a last-minute move and hired Lovie Smith, their defensive coordinator. It was a last-minute PR move, but really it was all leading up to DeMeco Ryans. DeMeco Ryans, at that point in his time, had 1 year of experience in terms of defensive coordinator for the 49ers, so he needed more experience in that, which is why he stayed with San Francisco. And Kyle McNair, I'm sure, has always been adamant on getting DeMeco Ryans, so they waited for 1 more year to this year, and they hired Lovie Smith, and he was going to be fired. He didn't even do a good job anyway, so he got fired. The time management, the player personnel, Lovie Smith did not do a good job with that. He did not get his team ready enough for those games. And, DeMeco Ryans now available, gets that interview, and of course he's going to favor the Texans because he'd been here before. And they've now had 4 black head coaches. It's one of the most, the Texans are one of the few teams who have hired a lot of African-American head coaches. So that whole racist thing is a complete joke. And, former general manager of the Texans, Rick Smith, he was also African-American. He was made the youngest GM in the NFL at that time at the age of 36. So, it's not a racist organization for whatever they're saying. So, Stephen A is a complete joke. But, talking about what DeMeco Ryans brings to the table, he's really a player's guy. He's a player's leader. Everyone's been talking about DeMeco Ryans in terms of, you had guys like J.J. Watt, all these Texan legends endorsing DeMeco Ryans. You know why? Because he's the player's guy. He can motivate them. He's their leader. He's the guy that the players can connect with and that they would love to play for. That's why you have all these Texan legends endorsing DeMeco. You have the fan base as well begging for him. And you had John McClain, obviously the famous Texans writer, talking about him. He helped develop J.J. Watt as well, DeMeco Ryans, and he was a captain. He was a star linebacker here in Houston. He was chosen in the 2nd round of the draft and chosen 33rd overall in 2006. He played for Alabama in college, was a SEC Defensive Player of the Year in 2005, was a Cotton Bowl MVP in 2006. He started to play middle linebacker for the Texans during preseason 2006, and he impressed, and he was named Rookie of the Year in 2006. Was 2nd in the league with tackles, 155. And after he was traded to Eagles, he still led the Eagles in sacks as well, until he got injured in 2016. So players and staff, around the NFL, not only that, media, have all been very impressed with DeMeco Ryans and what he brings to the table in terms of, being that leader, that head coach kind of material. You have players from the Eagles, you have, staff, you have the Eagles owner, you have guys who knew that this guy was going to be head coaching material. And, he did such a fantastic job with the 49ers, 2 years as their defensive coordinator. 49ers were the best defense in the league this year, one of the best defenses in the league last year. he's a former linebacker. He made Fred Warner look really, really good. He was one of the best linebackers in the game. He started as a coaching assistant for the Niners in 2017, then made his way to the inside linebackers assistant in 2018 to 20. And then after that, once Robert Saleh got hired by the New York Jets, DeMeco Ryans was promoted to defensive coordinator, where they were one of the best last season, now the best in the NFL in just his second season, number one in total defense and second in run defense, number one scoring defense. He's just done such a masterful job with that team that, you think he can translate it onto here, where the Texans have some, talent on the defensive end, and to where he can help develop these guys defensively, become a good leader in this locker room, and just basically lead the Texans in the direction that you want to see here in Houston. And the future does look really bright for the Texans at this point. With him just getting to hire DeMeco Ryans was a dream, honestly, for Texans fans. And, with him and Nick Caserio leading the way, I think Caserio's done a great job in terms of drafting players. Obviously, you would love to have Sauce Gardner. Stingley just is getting injured, which is unfortunate. You hope to see Stingley, step up. But, give credit to Cal McNair, the Texans owner. He's been getting a lot of criticism lately, obviously, with that whole Jack Easterby situation. But, he did so great in terms of firing Easterby, then hiring DeMeco Ryans. And the future is just so bright with this team. You have the second overall pick this year, where, you'd love to see a quarterback. And then you have the 12th overall pick from Cleveland. So you have 2 first-round picks in the top 15, which is really insane. And then you have $40 million in cap space. You can sign a lot of free agents, a lot of guys maybe from the 49ers that DeMeco wants to bring over. Jimmy Ward is a name we want to keep in mind. You have 11 picks in the 2023 draft. You have 5 picks in the top 73 of the draft, which should really help Nick Caserio. And then you take a look at the talent that's already on the team already. People act like the Texans have zero talent. They do have some talent. You have Derek Stingley, you have Jalen Petrie, who's been absolutely fantastic as safety. You have Damian Pierce, who's one of the best rookies of the year at running back. You have Laremy Tunsil and Titus Howard, 2 of the best tackle duos in the NFL. You have Kenyon Green, who's developing as a guard. You have Jonathan Grenard in the pass rush. You have Christian Harris as a linebacker. You have Nico Collins as a up-and-coming wide receiver. You're going to get John Mechie back this year as well. Your draft pick from last year, wide receiver. And, you have a good potential staff being developed here for DeMeco with, Bobby Slowick, the 49ers passing game coordinator. He might come over to become the offensive coordinator here. You have Corey Unlin, the 49ers secondary coach. He might become the defensive coordinator here. There are a lot of names out there, and I think DeMeco knows what he's going to do here, knows what he's trying to build up, and I think Texans fans and the franchise do trust him to get this right. And, you got DeMeco, that's one step. The next step is to get that quarterback, number 2 overall. You have to get that quarterback. It's either going to be Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud. Bryce Young from Alabama, C.J. Stroud from Ohio State. One will be available. I'm assuming the Bears have the number 1 overall pick. They will trade down, and one quarterback is going to be gone, so you've got to get the other one. But it's going to be interesting if the Bears do end up trading down. They give it to the Colts who get Bryce Young. Are you going to get Jalen Carter? That would be really interesting to see if the Texans will get that defensive player who's going to be really good. And then wait for Caleb Williams, a Heisman winner from this year, for next year's draft. But I don't think you can bear another season without the proper quarterback in Houston, so you need to get one of these 2. The fact is that there's hope in Houston for the Texans. You have, team reporter DP Sidhu and announcer Mark Vandermeer. They're explaining today how NRG was really, really happy and just excited for this moment. You've never seen the franchise in this kind of jubilation in a long time. It's one of the most exciting times for the Texans franchise, and never seen this many people excited about a hire like this. But that's what's happening, and it's really great to see the Texans stepping up and making these right moves. So welcoming DeMeco Ryans to Houston, he's gonna be the new head coach.